Welcome. This is To The Root Podcast, brought to you by We Grow Hair Indie and Transitions Indie, where we get to the root of hair restoration solutions, navigating hair loss, embracing life's journey, and everything in between. Welcome back to another episode To The Root. Here again with Nate Shaffer. So good to have you back on.
I'm excited about it.
How are the New Year's resolutions going for you?
It was good. I've already failed.
Yeah?
Yeah, I was going to start going to the gym, and
We're like 2 weeks into February now, so I'm actually pretty proud of you.
Yeah, but it's been a month since it failed.
Oh,
yeah.
So all right.
It's just not my thing.
That's fair. Same thing with me too. I always tell my wife the same thing. I'm going to hit the gym. I'm going to make sure I do all these things, and it lasts probably about until the third day into January. So actually, 4th day of January, that's my wife's birthday, so that's when we normally actually fall. Anyways, we've digressed. But regardless, happy to hear that New Year's is going well for you outside of that. And no, today's going to be an interesting topic. It's going to be talking about how to prepare for your consultation with us at We Grow Hair Indie and Transitions Indie. I don't think a lot of people understand exactly how in depth we actually go. A lot of people that we talk to that inquire with us are shocked to hear that that our consultation process takes like 60 minutes to 90 minutes. Most people think it's going to be like 15, 20-minute conversation done over the phone, send over maybe a couple pictures, but that's just really not the case. We really like to dive into things really, really in depth and not just say, okay, you have hair loss, here's your option, but we want to actually get to know you and your history and kind of what makes you tick and what you want to see as a result. But I know that this is something that you're really passionate about. You do a great job in your consultations as well with really trying to grasp people and understand what's going on. So I'm going to pass the mic over to you and talk to me about some of the things that people should be thinking about asking or how to prepare. Like, what are some of the things that whenever you have someone that comes in that's like ready, that you're like, man, this is awesome.
Right. I'll start with just explaining that, as you mentioned, a consultation at We Grow Hair Indie is different, right? Mm-hmm. And particularly if people have done some research or maybe they've had some consultations elsewhere, particularly in the last 5 years, this has turned into almost like a car buying process. Hey, here's a picture of my head. Here's my cost, right?
Right.
And it's a bigger deal than that, right? Mm-hmm. We're talking about different types of hair, different sized areas, different goals and expectations.
Right.
And we hone in on that when we do our consultation, and our consultation takes an hour and a half, and sometimes it can take a little bit longer. It just depends.
Right.
And we cover a lot of different things, including full explanations of all the services that we offer, what to expect afterward. And hair restoration is a journey, not a destination.
Right.
And we've all got our minds, it's all set on the destination, right? Mm-hmm. And it's like you have a goal, you want to get that goal, here's what it looks like, and that's all well and good. And I'd be lying if I didn't say that for me it wasn't a bit of a destination after my transplant.
Right.
Finally I feel whole again. Mm-hmm. I am still restoring my hair, and it's almost been 10 years since my transplant, right? So we explain that to people because a lot of guys don't understand it that way. Mm-hmm. So first thing when it comes to doing a consultation with us is it's going to be different than what you're used to if you've had other consults. Yeah. Come with a idea of what you're looking for, and that can be tough for some people if they're early on in research, and it's okay to not know what you want.
Yeah, because a lot of times I'll ask that question and be like, what are your goals, what are your expectations? And the person sitting across from me just kind of look at me, blank stare.
Yep.
Like, I don't know.
Right.
And for you and I, we're kind of like, how are you not sure? But if you really kind of take a step back and you put yourself in their shoes and be like, you know what, that actually makes sense. that is a hard question to answer.
Right.
Because they're there to seek guidance.
Yep.
And they're like, well, what's possible, right? So, I think that's a really good point. Is like whenever you're trying to come in, have somewhat of an understanding of, like what are you thinking that you want to see as an outcome.
Right. And I think that, some people may not know exactly what they want. Mm-hmm. In the back of everyone's head, they have an idea of what they're trying to accomplish, or they have a hope, right? Yeah. And share that with us. Have an idea what that is. a ton of research isn't mandatory before a consultation, and sometimes it's good, and sometimes it's even bad. If you do, you know what I mean. And I would never, encourage someone to not do research. Do research, but have an open mind, because, we're gonna explain these options that are specific to your goal and expectation. And that's one of the things I love about what we have is we do treatments, we have hair transplants, non-surgical grafting, scalp micropigmentation, and I base a recommendation off of what someone's looking for,
right?
Not what I think they need. And that's one of my favorite things about doing what I do, is it's all based on what they're looking for.
Right. Within limitations, right? Because as part of the in-depth nature of what we do, that when we do consultations, now again, we do virtual consultations as well as in-person consultations.
Right.
The best of the best is obviously in person. And for one main key detail is that we can actually set eyes on you and see what we're working with in person, right? But even outside of just being able to see you physically, we also do a hair and scalp analysis, right? We do a microscopic analysis, and we look at your hair follicles magnified and be able to see, okay, these are the areas in which we obviously to the naked eye can see that you have hair loss. But most people don't notice that they have hair loss until they've already lost at least 50% of the hair within that area. So they may have hair loss in other areas that they're not even aware of yet, which can pivot what that option or solution might be best for.
Absolutely.
Right? And so in addition to that, like we've touched on other things, outside of just genetic hair loss, you may not be able to decipher whether or not it's genetic versus something else, an autoimmune reason for hair loss or hormonal reason for hair loss that you can just see with the naked eye. A lot of times you have to be able to see that under magnification and be able to give them the proper guidance and recommendations of, hey, I really think that you should be seeing a dermatologist to see if this is truly what we're observing here, because if it is, then this option may not be a right option.
Right.
So I think that's just a super, super important detail that it has to be going into depth with.
Right. And I can't imagine how many of those people are missed, and especially the way transplants are sold in today's market, right? I mean, I can't tell you how many guys, and for those of you who don't know, I mean, when you get under a microscope and you look at a hair follicle that has alopecia, there are certain indicators that you're looking for. And certain alopecias may look certain ways, and our job is not to diagnose, but there's some red flags there.
Right.
A simple picture of the top of someone's head doesn't always paint the picture.
No,
and that's, again, we dot our I's and cross our T's on these things.
Right.
And that's why we give a hair and scalp to everybody.
Right. So outside of, things for getting ready for coming in and so on and so forth, prep, tell me about that. Like whenever people are coming in to have their consultation done, right? How should they come in?
Well, and some of this may seem no-brainer. First recommendation would be don't come in completely shaved clean.
Right. And you're talking about their head.
Yeah, right. You can right. Yeah, I
just had to clarify.
If your issue is hair loss and you're looking at hair restoration, don't shave all of your hair off.
Right.
And I can see how maybe it would be confusing that you shouldn't do that. But we have to get an idea of what the donor area looks like, the size of the donor area. Is there thinning in the donor area?
Right.
And when you do a microscopic analysis, and I know you know this, when you continuously shave your head with a Bic over and over and over again, and then you let it grow for 3 or 4 days, under a microscope, a miniaturized hair and a healthy hair look extremely similar.
Right.
So have a little bit of length. I don't know, 3-guard.
Yeah, 3-guard, quarter
yeah,
something like that.
It's just enough to where we can see the pattern of your hair loss.
Right. Which that also leads me to like topic, different hair fibers, things like that.
Of course.
I mean, totally understand people obviously come in a lot of times where they are coming in from work, and topic is something that is a huge component for them, where it's like, I can't go out of the house without it on. Totally understand that. We have that happen from time to time. We can work around it if necessary, where they wash it out, but we need to be able to see what's going on, right?
Yeah.
And so I think it's just little things that can really help with making sure that the overall analysis can be as accurate as possible, because even whenever you do use Topic, you wash it out, you use a microscope, those little fibers are stubborn.
Oh.
They'll stick around for days, even if you don't use them for days.
Right.
You know, so you look underneath the microscope, you'll see it, and you can't necessarily get the full pattern of it. But women in particular with like extensions, those types of things, extensions are fine, right? But it more so for like length, right? If it's for fill and things like that, like higher up onto the scalp, it can sometimes make things a little bit more skewed, a little bit harder to be able to decipher. But all in all, it's really not a huge deal, at least in my opinion. Do you kind of feel the same thing?
Not a problem, because you can get down to the roots and see.
Yeah.
So now a hair system,
That's not a story.
that makes it very difficult.
Yeah. So for those that don't know about hair systems, I know you've probably heard about the term, toupees, wigs, those types of things. Hair systems are kind of similar to that, but in a much more advanced way. I like to consider more like a prosthetic, right?
Yep.
So many guys versus doing like a clip-in or tape, they'll actually bond, like use an adhesive onto the scalp, and then that's adhered to the scalp. Obviously, if you come in for a hair loss consultation and you have that adhered to the scalp, we really can't tell anything. Now, we do offer non-surgical hair replacement, which is the hair system option, and we do have individuals that come in and we help with providing a service to be able to remove the hair and then do a consultation and then reapply.
Right.
So we want to make sure that we're also cognizant of, some people cannot go their day-to-day without their hair. So being able to provide that for people is also an option with what we do here for their initial consultation.
And that's a good thing for the viewers is if you're in a hair system. I personally don't wear one, but I understand the importance. I work with hundreds of people who wear them. Mm-hmm. And just to say, well, don't wear your system today, just come see us, that's a little bit more of a challenge than you'd think.
It's like walking around the street without a shirt and pants on.
Right.
It's a part of who you are, and you feel almost naked without it.
Yeah, so it's nice that we have that, and you mentioned that we can remove it and reapply it after the consultation.
Yeah, for sure.
Maybe give us a heads up. I mean, just let us know ahead of time. That would be a lot of help.
Another thing that I like, too, is whenever guys come in, or women for that matter, and it's like goals, expectations, they come in with a picture, right? They're like, hey, this is what I want to look like.
Right.
I find that helps out a lot, because I think the hardest part of what we do in consultation is trying to get inside of someone's head and visualize what they see as a result, mm-hmm. right? Yeah. If someone says, well, I want a full head of hair again. Well, what's that mean to you? What's that mean to me? It means something completely different to everyone, right? You can have a guy that has 3 hairs on top of his head right now. He wants a full head of hair, and what that means is he wants a total of 100, right? 100 more hairs. But you could have another person that wants to turn the clock back to when they're 15 years old or look like Tom Cruise, right? And so having some type of an idea of what they want to look like, I feel really helps, because managing expectations, understanding what can be done, can't be done, and what limitations there are, I think is the hardest part of what we do.
Right. And to the point that you made, because I get a lot of that, goals and expectations, and a lot of times the guys will just have their picture already ready. Like it'll be like, oh, right here it is. I want to look like that.
Right.
And what they're showing you is a picture of themselves without any hair loss. Mm-hmm. And I get that. A lot of the time, because when do we normally start losing hair? In our early 20s, a lot of them mid-20s, if we're fortunate, our 30s, but a lot of the time it's the early 20s, is he's showing you a picture of an immature hairline, because he was young when he had a full head of hair. Yep. And if you look at a guy that has a great head of hair throughout his life, as he ages, his facial structure changes. Mm-hmm. And particularly if we're looking at transplants, we redesign an appropriate hairline based on your facial features that's going to be something you can age with. That's a 17-year-old picture of a kid, right? So sometimes what's possible and what the reality is, or what he's asking for and what the reality is, may be a little different, but I'm just excited if someone knows what they want.
Yeah.
You know?
That's something to work off of.
Right, absolutely.
So, and then I think another really important thing, now this is a one that can sometimes be a little, we don't run across this very often where people don't know their genetic history, but I find that knowing the genetic history and, what grandpa looked like, uncle looked like, what, mom, dad, what their hair loss all entailed, like getting a little backstory on that, like ask dad, hey dad, when did you start losing your hair? Well, I was 21 years old, son. Okay, well, you have a little bit of a gauge as to understanding where those are. Those are helpful things to kind of map out potentially what we're dealing with long term, because I know that everyone is worried about what's 5 inches in front of their face, right? They want to know, how can I go from where I am right now to where I want to be in the next immediate future, right?
Yeah.
Our job is to make sure that we take care of that, but also take into consideration what the repercussions could be, or things could potentially happen in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years down the road, and position you for success. And we're somewhat trying to predict the future, even though it's impossible. But the more ammunition we have in regards of understanding that genetic makeup is super important.
And it becomes more and more important the younger the guy is.
100%. Which we're seeing a lot more younger guys as of lately too.
Right.
I think it's just whether it be from a stress related thing and just overall, I don't know what it is, but we're just seeing a lot more younger guys, and it is an important thing to really understand those genetic things.
Yeah, and what would you say? Dad, mom's brothers?
Honestly, it's a bit. It's kind of 60-40, right? There's the wise tale, or there's the myth of, oh, well, look at your mom's dad, and that's what your hair loss is going to be like. Or, hey, it skips generations. In all reality, I mean, it's going to be a bit of a shotgun effect of like, okay, either you got the short end of the stick or the long end of the stick, right? But the hair loss gene is more predominant on the X chromosome, which comes from the mom. But it is still present on the Y, right, which comes from dad. So, not just understanding where mom's coming from or where it's coming from on the mom's side, but dad's side too is really important. Because if you look at me, for instance, my dad he's Norwood 6. He has a lot of hair loss. Most of the hair loss falls on my dad's side. My hair type is my mother's side, the Spanish side, right? I've got more of like the wavy hair, the brown and this, that, and the other. Hardly any hair loss on my mom's side of the family. But I've got my mom's hair type with my dad's hair loss pattern.
And isn't that something? Because I follow very strongly on my mom's side.
Yeah.
When it comes to hair loss, and I think, truthfully, we really don't know. I mean, there are some correlations, and what would you say? 80% of the time, you're going to follow someone. You're going to follow a little bit of the family history there, but I get the one-offs.
Yeah.
My whole family has a full head of hair. No, literally, my mom.
But if you dig deep enough, it's the uncle to the uncle.
Yeah, it's in there somewhere. It's in there somewhere almost always.
Right. So understanding other things that people have done, that's another thing that's important to know as well. Like during the consultation process, we talk about, genetic histories. We talk about things that you've tried in the past. Yep. Is there anything that you've done? If you did, for how long?
This is important. If I'm talking to someone who has never tried a treatment in their life, or if I'm talking to someone who's been on minoxidil, been on finasteride, tried PRP for years, I'm going to treat those two different people differently.
Right.
Because I have someone who's, thrown the kitchen sink at it versus someone who hasn't. And that's important to know. Or if they've had hair work done. Have they had a strip transplant in the past? Have they had a large-scale FUE procedure? Have they had a transplant in Turkey?
Right.
Something like that. I mean, we want to know that. Usually we'll see it. It can be quite obvious sometimes, but those things can seriously impact some of the options that we have. So it's good to know those things too.
And I know this is one that's probably lesser of a importance, if you will, but to kind of hit on that term importance, how important or how much this bothers someone, right? If this is something where it's like you can meet with guys or with women where they have a lot of hair loss, right? Again, I use the reference of a guy that's got 3 hairs on top of his head, right? I know it's an extreme example.
Yep.
But you can meet a guy with 3 hairs on top of his head, right? And his number one goal is, I don't want to get any worse.
Yep.
I just want to keep them, right?
Heard it.
I mean, I probably want to get more hair up there, but that's not his goal, right? It's also coming in and understanding those, like, is it just because you come in for a hair transplant consult, or just not hair transplant consult, but that could be part of it, but coming in for a consultation for your hair doesn't mean that you're having to come in for a hair transplant consult, or that we're going to be individuals that are sitting here saying, like, you need to do a hair transplant because you're bald, or because you need a hair system because you're this. We care also about what's most important to you, and if it's retention of what you have, awesome. Yeah. That's great. That is a goal.
And yeah, I've seen guys with way more hair than me do a transplant, and I've seen a guy that from 10 feet away looks bald do treatments.
Yeah.
So that's the fun part of the job, right?
Yep.
Getting to know someone and getting an idea of what will make them happy, and it truly is different for everybody.
Yeah.
And it's not a cookie cutter approach. This is not a cookie cutter area of medicine, and it's been reduced to that sometimes. I mean, I feel like it's been reduced to that.
Yeah, especially with the telehealth stuff.
Yeah.
You know, it's the amount of times I've heard from people, like, it's like, yeah, I just went online, filled out a questionnaire, and then boom, I had it in my mailbox.
Or this one, I already know I need 2,000 grafts. How much is it?
Yeah.
I've heard that so many times, and it's, well, how do we know you need 2,000 grafts? First of all, what do you look like? What kind of hair do you have? I mean, the type of hair can make a difference in how many grafts you need in the type of procedure. So I need 2,000 grafts. I already know that. It's like, and maybe you do know, right? But how many times have you heard that and it's nowhere close?
Oh yeah.
So that's so coming into a consultation, right? Back to that, have an open mind, right?
Yeah,
so that's you could have had 3 or 4 prior consultations. You might know exactly what you want. You've heard the same thing. Come into it with an open mind.
Right.
Maybe we'll tell you the exact same thing you've been told.
Then great.
Maybe we'll have a different opinion on it. Right.
And honestly, in my opinion, I would be encouraged, or I'd be happy to hear that they heard the same thing from what we said too, because that means that there's good, reputable things that are being delivered to people out there, right? Transparency is number one. You know, always making sure that our number one objective is to do what's right for the person sitting across from us. Yeah. Do no harm, whether it's physical or emotional, and making sure that the person gets the proper care that they need. Yeah. You know, and I can't preach on that enough. It's one of the most important things that I live by, that you do too. And part of the reason why we've been in the industry for over 25 years. Right. So. No, I think key things really from a consultation standpoint, like you said, come in with an open mind. Come in with some understanding of your genetic history if you can, right? Obviously, there's not everyone that knows their grandpa, great grandpa, great uncle, so anything that you can do helps. Understanding of remedies that you've done in the past and things that you've already attempted. Come in with your hair showing the hair loss. Even as uncomfortable as it can be.
That's a big one.
Yeah, even as uncomfortable.
We got to see the loss.
Even as uncomfortable as it can be, we can still work with you on it, but it really does help with providing you the best possible solution recommendation. Right. So, anything else you want to add with this?
We've pretty much covered it all. I mean, if you're thinking about it and it's been on your mind,
just come in.
Yeah, don't hesitate. It's that, and we hear that all the time when we do testimonial videos, and it's we don't coach people on what to say, but a lot of the time they all kind of say the same thing. It's just give someone a call, have a consultation, get some professional advice on this, because that is step one, right? Yeah. So,
and the hardest thing a lot of times is to walk through those doors, and finally be like, all right, I'm here. This is something that bothers me. I guess I'm going to do this, right? And it's really, I can't tell you how many times I've heard that, where it's like, walking through those front doors were the hardest thing for me to do. But now that I'm here, now that I've done it, I'm happy I have. Right. And speaking on the testimonial things, so many people say, I wish I would have done this years ago.
Yeah.
And I feel the same way with my results. I feel the same thing with the. Why didn't I just accept this before? It's a hard thing to accept, but yeah, super pleased that I did it, and I'm so grateful that we have the ability to help out the thousands and thousands of clients that we have already. And for people that are listening to this, know that there is hope. There is the ability to get you that look that you want. That you don't have to give up on this. If you want to look and feel your best, we're here for you to help. We really are. And we've all been through this. Everyone that works here at We Grow Hair Indy and Transitions Indy, we've been through hair loss in some form or fashion. And there's the sympathy there, the empathy, as well as the excitement for that possibility of getting you where you want to be.
Yeah. And I think that some guys are quite intimidated, and I say that because I relate to that. I was extremely intimidated to talk to someone about it. How much is it going to be? What does the solution look like? Mm-hmm. I was almost more scared because I knew whatever it took I would do.
Right. Because
I wanted it that bad. And, it was a 3-year journey for me from start to finish. It was a...
You're really indecisive, aren't you?
It was probably a 10-year journey of how long my hair loss bothered me until I finally solved it. But getting the proper information to pull on the trigger, and I feel like that's awesome. Too long of a wait, but I get it.
You still got there, though.
Yeah, absolutely. And I understand anybody going through that, too.
Yeah. No, that's fantastic. Nate, really appreciate you being on the show today, and try to work on those New Year's resolutions. Yeah. All right. It's been a pleasure going over this with you, and looking forward to having you back on the show. And thanks for tuning in to the Root.
Thanks for tooting.
Tooting.
Thanks for tooting it to the Root.
All right.
Is that good?
Now we're going to conclude. Email us at info@wegrowhairindy.com with your questions or topics you want us to cover. Head to our website to schedule your free consultation with one of our experts. I'm Will Sattler. Thank you for listening, and catch you next time.